Hello, everyone. I'm Bart Massey. Welcome, as always, to Introductory Programming. Today, I'm going to talk about our course homework, the picnic game, which a lot of people seem to have been struggling with, and that's fair because it was a little ahead of where some of you are. I want to work through it in this video and give you an idea of how I would tackle it if I came to it fresh, partly so that you can get some help with solving the specific thing, but partly so you can get an approach that will serve you in good stead for your future computing endeavors. So, with that, let's get started. And I think a sensible place to start is and this video will be as long as it is. I haven't scripted it and don't know how long it's going to be. We will go until we solve the problem. I expect it to be fairly quick, but we'll see. So let's start with, like you do with any assignment, with just looking at it and trying to figure out what's going on. It describes where we should be in terms of understanding input, output, variables, if, else, elif, loop, and lists. It's quite a lot of things, but after 5 weeks, hopefully, we've got most of them at least somewhat under control. Picnic game overview. It's a fun activity for 2 or more people. This is based on a fun game that is played in real life as an icebreaker sometimes. The object is for each player to bring the correct item to the picnic. And the secret that only the person running the game knows, hopefully, to start out with, is that when you're asked what to bring to the picnic, you say that you'll bring a thing that has the same first letter as your first name. So Bart might bring baked beans. Carl might bring cookies, or he might cancel. Who knows? So if and all that happens is, the person running the game says you can come to the picnic, you can't come to the picnic, depending on whether they got that right. And usually you keep going until everybody gets frustrated or figures out what the trick is to getting to go to the picnic. So here's this little scenario. It's good to go through these scenarios and see what's going on for sure. A little script here that shows, and this is sort of one cycle of the game. You ask each player once, and so I'm going to read through this pretty carefully. Through this, it's 2 cycles of the game. We run through a cycle with Ellie bringing eclairs and coming, me bringing graham crackers and not coming. Then we go again. Ellie brings eggs, I bring booleans, and then I'm all good to go. You'll notice it doesn't matter what the person says, it just matters what letter it starts with. That's good to know. So this is all explained, and now we've got that part figured out. And now we actually get to the program specification. It's really important when you're starting out on a problem-solving expedition to understand the domain, understand what it is you're trying to do. Until you're confident you could play the picnic game with people, maybe even until you've tried it out, you probably should figure that out before you start trying to figure out how to deal with it in computer program space. So, we're supposed to do some things here. Set up the game by asking for the number of players and then asking the name of each player. And we presumably have to remember those names somehow because we're going to use them more than once. And then to play the game, a cycle consists of sort of asking what they'll bring, each player what they'll bring to the picnic, checking to make whether they can come or not, and reporting that. And then after a cycle, you can ask for another cycle or not. So here's a sample program run. It's always good to read these very closely. How many players? So this is the prompt we're going to use. The player types 2. Somebody types 2. Then it asks for player 1 name, and we say Mike. Player 2 name, we say Bart. And then we start the main game loop, the main game cycle. Say, hi, Mike, we're going on a picnic. What will you bring? And Mike types nachos. Sorry, you can't come because N and M are different letters. Hi, Bart, we're going on a picnic. What will you bring? Bacon. You can come because B and B are the same. Notice that even if it wasn't capitalized, it should still be the same. And then when a cycle's over, we ask if they want another cycle. That's what this try again yes no is. Somebody typed yes, so we go through a whole nother cycle of the same thing. Now, when I look at this, I'm noticing the details. I'm noticing that there's a prompt called how many players. I'm going to basically copy paste that prompt into my program. This player one name, obviously I can't copy paste the one, but I'm going to make sure that my prompt matches this when the program runs. Um, Again, try again, yes, no. I'm going to make sure that prompt is right. I'm going to accept yes as a valid answer. I'm going to accept no as a valid answer and make sure they do the right thing. So, sort of trying to figure out what's being asked for and being really literal about that is a really good idea. All right. So we're supposed to do some things. And here's a bunch of hints. The number of players might be used as a loop counter. It is one of the ways we could proceed. I'm not sure it's the way I'm going to proceed. We could store the player names in a list. How would you get the first letter of a string? If else, elif else's are useful here. And then test your program and make sure that, it's right. And then the general hints. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. So I think we have a pretty good description of what we want to do here. So when I look at this and look at the description of what I'm trying to do, I think many of you did the same thing I'm going to do, which is to break it into sort of two parts. There's sort of a first part where you actually get the list of player names. And I said list because my plan, like I say, we're going to use these a bunch of times. I really just want to keep the names in a list. So I'm going to sort of start by writing sort of pseudocode, sort of write something that's not code but is just a thing. So let's write that out. And so usually when I have multiple parts, I want to break the program into multiple functions, one per part, and call them. Not always, but it often is a good rule. So I'm going to say, well, there's a function that's collect the list of names, and then there's another function down here somewhere that's play the game, and this function starts with get the count of names, get the number of names, and then for each name, get the name, save it, save it. Well, that's not very specific. So I'm just going to save the whole name because I think there's no reason not, because we'll need it later when we prompt people. Actually, there is a reason to do so. And then when I'm done, it's a function, so return the name list. End of the name list. So now we've got a sort of an idea here that what we're going to do is sort of, if the user says 0, we'll return 0 names, which is an empty list. So we want to start with an empty list. We find out how many things we're going to do. And then we're going to somehow loop around collecting the names and tacking them on the end of the list. And then we're going to return the list. And to play the game, well, let's talk about how to play one cycle first. For each name in the name list, then we want to sort of there's so many spaces there. For each name in the name list, we sort of want to do what? Well, we want to ask for the food, and food should probably be in double quotes here because the person can answer anything they want. get the first character of the name, get the first character of the food, compare them ignoring uppercase versus lowercase, print the appropriate message for the comparison, and then and when we're done with that, when we've done that for everything, that's sort of, this is sort of a single round. So that's a thing. This is sort of how we play a round, I guess. And then at the end, what we're going to do here is we'll collect the list of names. I'm going to put 2 in the front of these to say they're functions. Select the list of names. I'm going to, while repeatedly, 1, 2, 3, 4, play around with the names in the list, and then I'm going to ask whether to keep going. If not, stop the game. And there we go. So now in just a few minutes, I've sort of broke this down into pieces, and I've sort of sketched out all the things I think I have to do. Now, this may not be perfect. I may have forgotten things. I may have said things that are wrong. But what I haven't tried to do yet is write a computer program, because until I know what I want to do, it's sort of hard to write a computer program. What this is called pseudocode, and it's really useful for thinking about how your program is going to look. It's somewhere between a very informal description, like was in the homework, and a computer program, right? So let's now take this pseudocode and use it to start writing our program. And I'm not going to write the whole thing here, but I want to at least sort of outline it a little bit and give you part of it, just to give you an idea of how you translate this pseudocode into actual Python code. So first thing is always play the picnic game. This is Bart Massey's source that he wrote in 2021. Collect and return a list of name from the user, a list of names from the user, then we'll say player names. These kind of comments, it's hard to have any great general rules. That comment seems fine, but you notice I'm paying a lot of attention to the comments, a lot of attention to structuring things so that I can actually, now, oh, I should have said I'm using Emacs, which is a text editor. This is what I usually use. There's nothing here you can't do with Moo and with that kind of stuff. But I like to use this tool, so that's kind of a difference between what I'm doing and what you do. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I should be using Notepad for the text file and Moo for the Python program, but I think you get the idea. So now I need a function to collect the list of names. I think collect names would be a good name for that function. What does it take as arguments? Well, nothing. It's pretty self-contained. It's going to do its job by asking for stuff from the user. And always say what you're going to return. So I now know that this thing's going to return a list of names. So now, what do I want to do here? It says make an empty list of names. Okay, I know how to do that. I know what an empty list is. Here's a variable called names that contains an empty list. Now I need to, I put from the user in the pseudocode. It should be count of users from the user. Yeah, that's confusing. Yeah, that's really confusing. I'm not sure I made that better, but it's good enough for me to know what's going on. The point is, right here, I want to do a thing we've done a bunch of times before. This is the number of names. I use this convention where I stick n on the front of variables to number them sometimes. The number of names is what? We're gonna say it should be an integer, and we get it by inputting what? We have a prompt string. Do we know what the prompt string is? We do, because here in the homework, oops. Here in the homework, if I can go to the right place in it, we actually were shown an example prompt string. We're just going to use that. This is one of those places where it doesn't pay to be clever. So how many players is what we're supposed to use? So I'm going to try to copy paste that. We'll see if we're successful. Nope. What happened? God. Okay, that was frustrating. Let's go see what's going on here. I don't want that. I don't want to update this homework. I just want to copy that thing I was trying to select. Okay, it's going to be a real pain here. That's always nice. This is because I'm the person who can edit. I'm a person who can edit this. It's confusing everything. So let's try one more time. If this doesn't work, I will give up on it. It won't work. Okay, I give up on it. This is D2L being D2L. My apologies. Anyway, what we're supposed to have is how many players here. And once we have how many players, then the next thing we're supposed to do is take that number, and now we want to sort of loop that many times collecting names. And probably the easiest way to do that is say for underbar in range and names. I'm going to call this n players. I think that's clearer. I think a lot as I write programs about what the variable name should be. What is underbar here? It just means I don't care about this variable. You can call it I, you can call it anything you want. I don't care about its name at all. Underbar turns out to be a legal variable name, so I'm just going to use that. The point is I want to loop this many times. Usually when you want to loop a known number of times, a for loop with a range is what you'll use. And what I'm going to do is collect a name from the player. And here we have names and name. That's super confusing and awkward, so I'm going to change my mind again and call this player names. I'm going to call this name, and what was our prompt supposed to be? I'm certainly not going to try and paste it again, but let's see if we can look at it. Here we go. This is an easier way to work with this anyway. So where's a prompt here? Ask for the name of each player. Let's look at our sample run. Player blah name. Oh, I do care about that thing. So this can't be underbar because I really need to know what number it is. We're going to use an F string here. We've talked about F strings. And you'll notice right here that I've already made a bug. And that's because I here, right? How does it go? If there are 3 players, how does I go? Well, it's 0, 1, 2, right? We count starting from 0 in Python. But it would be really weird for the user if you asked for player 0's name first. So I really need to add one here somewhere. And where I can add one is right here. And now I'm going to tack this on the end. And this is the append function for lists. We've talked about it quite a lot. And I think that's what we wanted to do, except for the part that we're forgetting. What are we forgetting here? We're forgetting to... Oh, yeah. I actually remembered, but I was waiting for you to figure it out. We forgot to return the player names at the end. I'm going to put a thing before this. It's going to look weird. I want the program to crash if we didn't get the right number of players. So I'm just going to stick an assertion in here that says crash if you don't get the right number of players. And that is going to check before I return that I'm returning something that makes sense. So now I've got all these player names. Well, that's cool. That's cool. Now let's go through our pseudocode. How does this work? Did we make an empty list of names? We did. Did we get the count of users? We did. It's this end players thing. For each user, yep, for user number 0, 1, 2 up to n-1, we get a name from the user. Yeah, that's what this does. We save it on the end of the name list. Yeah, that's what this does. And I have a check here that isn't in the pseudocode. That's all right. That just says I want to check this thing first and then return the name list. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I think this code's right. Now, I'm not writing any more code right now until I've tried a thing, which is to see if collect names work. So let's just call collect names. I'm just going to call it names here because player names I'm tired of typing. So now I've got a whole Python program. It says names is collect names, and I'm just going to print them. So right now, before I write any more of the program, I'm going to test this function. I'm going to call it, see what it returns, and print that. And that way I have some idea that this thing's actually working correctly. It's super important to do this as you go along, to check your stuff one at a time, one thing at a time. And that's part of why you break it up into functions like this, is because you can just call one of those functions and see if it's working right. So let's try this and see what it does. Now let's not do it this way. Let's get back into Moo here. I'm going to start up our old friend Moo if I have it installed here, which maybe I don't. Install it real fast off screen here. Huh. I just switched computers because my computer exploded over the weekend, so now I'm dealing with the consequences of having an exploded computer. So this will take just a second to get things up and running here. Yeah, now I should be able to say Moo editor. I can say Moo editor, and it comes out way too big like it always does because that's sort of its deal. And I'm going to copy and paste some code into it. I am going to write my code here. I'm going to write it right there. And I'm going to take this code and copy it. So now we have it in Moo editor. And why did I want to do it this way? Well, so it'll be too small for you to see. Let's see if we can make it. There we go. As big as it gets. Hopefully it's big enough. So let's see. So what I wanted to do is actually step through it with the debugger, because that's a really useful way to do it. So to do that, I'm going to put our code back that's called collect names. But now I want to step through it with the debugger and see what it looks like as I run it. So start the debugger. Whoops, it wants me to save first. That's a reasonable thing. All right. Now we're going to do this. I'm going to step over this function definition, and now I'm going to step into this call. So we're going to see what collect names does when we run it. It sets player names to an empty list. And now I got a variable over here. Let me make this all visible. A variable here named player names. And it's a list of 0 items. It sure is. Let's step over that. And to do that, it'll ask me how many players down at the bottom. Again, too small to see, and I can't make it bigger this time, apparently, because that would be cheating. There we go. And I want 2 players. Now it's going to say, well, let's walk over the players. So you'll notice that n players is 2 now, and the player names is still empty, but I'm going to fix that pretty soon. Let's step over this, and now we'll be down inside here, and it's going to prompt me with player 1 name, and it's going to wait for me to type a name, it looks like. Step over, and the player 1 name will be Bart. Why not? And now it's going to stick that name supposedly on the end of the list. And now if I look at this list, easier said than done, it says player names is a list of 1 item. So what's in it? Oh, it has an item named Bart. It has an item Bart in it. So let's just continue from here without stepping anymore. You'll notice that it went through one thing, right? Let's actually set a breakpoint right here and continue with this loop and run through it one more time. Player 2 name is Mike, I guess. And now it's going to stop right here. And our list should look like what we want. It has Bart and Mike in it. I'm going to do this assertion. If the program crashes at this point, it means I screwed up somehow, but it looks like there's 2 items and the number of players is also 2. So we're actually good. So step over and it's fine. Return player names and we step out. Whee! And now you'll notice back in main, names is a list of 2 items. What are the 2 items? Bart and Mike. So names has what you want in it. And then on this last line, notice that it prints Bart and Mike down here. And so everything's good. We have exactly the list we had. It's got 2 strings. They're the names. Now I'm going to look at... I'm going to stop it. And then I'm going to run it again and see what it does. This time I'm just going to run it. What if I say 0 players? Hey, look, it returned an empty list of names. Is that what I wanted? Well, sure, right? It says 0 times through this loop. Yeah, that's fine. This started as an empty list. It was returned as an empty list. There's 0 players in that list. It's going to make for a short, boring game, but it's perfectly legal. You should always test edge cases like that. And you'll notice that when we stop here, collect names is still in scope. So I can say collect names again from here if I want. Let's try with 1 player, Bart. And it returns a list containing Bart. Let's try it with 4 players, Bart, Alice, Carol, and David. And there we go. List of names. Bart, Alice, Carol, David. So we've written one of the functions. That's pretty cool. Let's go back to what we were trying to do a while ago here. So I feel like this has been tested. I feel like I don't have to think about it anymore. I'm just going to delete this, call it driver code. I'm going to leave this assertion in because I really do want the program to crash if it doesn't have the right number of names, which it always will, but easy to say. So let's go back and look at our pseudocode again. Now we want to play around, and sometimes you just do it in here. I'm not going to write this one out, but I am going to sort of get you started. Play a round of the picnic game using the given names. That's as good a comment as anything. And we're going to pass the names in that we're supposed to use. And then for each name in the name list, all right. And again, I'm going to call this player names just so I don't get so confused. Oh, now we're supposed to ask for the food. We're supposed to get the first character of the food, the first character of the name, compare them, and print the message, right? So this plays one round of the game. That's cool. That's a thing we want to do. I'm not going to write that right now. I'm just going to leave this commented in and work on it later. And that's often a good thing to do, is just to get the skeleton in place first. And now I'm going to think about the rest of the pseudocode. Let's go back to it again. Collect the list of names, and then repeatedly try to keep to run the game until it tells you to stop. How do I collect the list of names? Well, we already had that code. Names is collect names. There. Now we've got the names collected repeatedly. Huh. So when are we supposed to stop? Well, we're supposed to stop when the user tells us to stop. But Python really only has for loops and while loops, and it's not obvious what for loop you should write here, so we probably want a while loop. Well, let's see. True. Let's just loop forever for now. And notice that looping forever is not so good, right? We are stuck. You don't want the user to be stuck. You want the program to be able to stop when it's done. So we're going to have to figure out how we're getting out of this while loop. And there's a couple possibilities here. Play around with the names in the list. We had a function called playround. It took the names. That seems pretty straightforward. Ask whether to keep going. We know how to do that. If not, you'll notice the if here because the editor color codes Python. If not, stop the game. Oh, sorry, that shouldn't be commented out. Oh, what does that look like? If some condition, what? How do we stop the game? Well, there's a lot of ways we could do it. We could call exit 0 here. That would work. What I'm going to suggest is that break is the right thing to use. Break will break out of this while loop at the end, and then we'll just fall off the end of the program, and then we'll stop it. So, there we are. We're sort of halfway through the game. We've got 30 lines of code. It looks like we'll have another, well, these are about 1-to-1, really. Maybe that's 5-to-1. So let's say another 4, 34, 35, maybe. So maybe 35 lines, including comments and all kinds of stuff, for this program. How long did it take us to write? Well, my timer says half an hour to get this far. So we'd probably get another half hour if we really wanted to finish the game out, which I'm not because it's not time. So what have we learned? We've learned that you probably want to write out your thing in pseudocode maybe before you start. We've learned that we want to keep things as simple as possible. Notice how many lists there are here. There's one list. There's the list of player names. That's the only list we should need for this, right? Some people might try to make a list of foods. I don't think there's any reason, because when you get the food, you can just compare it with the name right there. You don't need to store it anywhere permanently. And so just using a variable with a string in it for the food is probably the right thing. And notice the structure, overall structure. We got a function to collect the names, a function to play the round. We've got this top level code that actually calls those functions to do the work. That's a really common, powerful style in learning to program. The last thing I would say is there's some things here that feel kind of fuzzy. A lot of people kind of struggled with them. And maybe one of them is, well, how do I get the first character of the name and the first character of the food? Well, the food we just prompt for an input. The name we is the name in our list. So this is a string. We got a string variable named name. We'll probably have another string variable named food. We want to compare the first characters. That's one of the things we want to do. And you'll notice that I'm done now basically with this pseudocode. I don't really need it for anything. So I'm going to just stop updating it. How do I do that? That seems interesting. Well, this is the point at which I get out Python and play with it a little bit. And this is a really powerful technique, is just prototyping right on the command line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just type some stuff. I'm going to say, well, what if I have some string named name? So now I've got name and food strings. I can see that by just typing their names. That's Bart. Food is bacon. So these variables have string values stored in their little boxes. And so now what I want to do is see if those start with the same letter. Well, how do I get the first letter? Well, the first letter is at position 0. So if I look it up after a lot of messing around, I find out, well, that gets the B out of the name. This is the B out of this. I want to compare those. Is that true? No, it's false. Oh, shoot. I forgot about case sensitivity. So maybe the thing to do is 0 dot lower to turn it into lowercase equals food sub 0 dot lower to turn it into lowercase. And that's true. Well, what if I set the name to Fred? And now let's see if that's true. And I can just copy paste it right in there. Oops. Maybe I can just copy paste it right in there. Sorry. Try that again. Huh. Yeah. Let's try that again. I don't know what it's doing now. I think I'm doomed here. There we go. So sure enough, when the name is Fred and the food is still bacon, then yeah, what if I set it to fish? Now let's see what that does. See, so by just messing around here at the command line, I can get some idea of what I'm going to write when I actually write the program in these situations. So what did I write in my pseudocode? I wrote get the first character of the name, get the first character of the food, right? I broke it up into right? Now, name initial here should be F, capital F. Food initial should be lowercase f, right? Because the name initial was the first character of fish. The food, or Fred, I mean, the food initial was the first character of fish. And now I can compare those in the next line, being careful about case. That was what it told me to do. Compare the first characters, ignoring case, and print the appropriate message. So based on the result of that comparison, which probably I'm going to use an if statement there, I can, print what I'm supposed to print. So it's all about breaking stuff down like that. And when you're confused about how something works, try things out in the Python interpreter. And when they don't work, you'll have a tiny thing that doesn't work instead of a big complicated thing that doesn't work. And that'll really help you diagnose and debug. Well, this video has gotten a little long. I'm going to call it here. Hopefully that's enough help um, to get you started. Hopefully with this you can work through it. If not, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Of course, another strategy is to take frequent breaks. We've probably gone longer this time than we should. If you find yourself stuck, the first thing I'd encourage you to do is walk away for a bit, reflect on it, reflect on other things you're doing, and then come back. A fresh brain can often be huge. And of course, these are difficult times. Please stay safe and well. Please do what you can to do that. I know it's not easy. Take care, everybody. It's been fantastic talking with you, and I look forward to doing it again soon.